to the CSA Vital Times, the podcast. I am your host, Rita Agarwal. Today, I will be speaking to two brilliant and fabulous authors, but they're the authors most recently of a book called Anesthesia at Stanford, the Larson Years, 1972 to 1982. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. J. Brodsky and Dr. John Utne. Dr. Brodsky went to medical school at State University of New York. He then did his anesthesia residency at Beth Israel Hospital and the Harvard Medical School. He split his residency up by doing a research fellowship year and then returned as a chief resident. He started in Stanford in 1977, where he's been ever since. He has contributed greatly to both the science, the medicine, and the progress of anesthesia. He was interviewed for I'm going to make sure I get this right, a history essay. His essay was the winner in 2022, and he was interviewed because he was the first person to use and publish on the use of dantrolene for malignant hyperthermia. Dr. John Utne, who's with us on speakerphone, joined the department as an assistant professor in 1977. Dr. Utne, as many of you who know him, has had a very long and very colorful career. He's been incredibly productive within the CSA as well as at Stanford and within the field of anesthesia, and has also received multiple awards. So with that introduction, I'd like to dive right into the book. I want to first say that I actually really enjoyed reading the book. And I'm going to say that I'm going to admit that I was a little bit surprised because I didn't expect that I would enjoy it as much as I did. I didn't train here at Stanford, and I came here after, having spent the majority of my career elsewhere. So I really didn't have the sense of the Stanford way. But reading the book was fascinating to me because A, I knew a lot more people than I thought I would through reading this book, and B, I loved how you kind of wove what was going in at that time during the year, as well as what was going on at Stanford, and then the stories that came with each of these individual residents and fellows who you highlight in the book. I want to start by asking you both, what made you decide to write the book?
John, I'll start. Originally, when I joined the CSA History Committee, I was going to submit an article on Ellis Cohn. Ellis Cohn was my mentor, a very famous researcher, clinician, administrator. In delving into his background, I realized that I knew very, very little about the history of the institution that I had spent 44 years at, as far as the previous anesthesiologists right from the start. So I actually put together a book called The Early History of Stanford Anesthesia from 1909, when the medical school was established, to 1972, which was the final year of Dr. John Bunker's chairmanship as the first chair of the newly formed anesthesia department. That got me interested in the further history of the department. So with the cooperation or as a team with Phil Larson, who was the chair from 72 to 82, and John Utne, the three of us put together the history of the Larson years. That's my reason for.
I just want to say that it's been very interesting, and I think it's been fascinating to see what everybody's been doing. I mean, we couldn't get hold of everybody, but I have to say it's been fascinating what people have done with their lives after leaving Stanford.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest reward, is contacting so many former colleagues and residents and discovering the incredible journeys they've all had in their careers. As you said, Rita, even though you did not train here, many of the people who did train here went on to have to be very, very successful in academics and administration and in in entrepreneurship and in fields other than anesthesia, and many of their names are familiar to the readers in general.
Yeah, that was one of the things that surprised me is how many people were so successful after their training here, and how many people. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised given Stanford and Silicon Valley, but how many people went on to be entrepreneurs and to create drugs companies, monitoring equipment, all of that stuff. That was actually really fascinating, given that a lot of this history is occurring during the time that pulse oximetry is being developed and capnography is being developed. What did you find the most surprising part of doing this book?
Well, John, do you have a comment?
I found the guy with the bee, not the bees, but he's a world authority on what was it again? I'm blanking now.
Beatles, I think.
Beatles, yeah, unbelievable. This man is yeah. And so he has this dual job basically. He does anesthesia and then he goes out and investigates Beatles, and he's a world authority. I mean, that's wild.
You're talking about David Weissman.
That's the one. Thank you.
There's too many really to recount. I mean, Bill New was a resident. He and Mark Yelderman produced the first commercial pulse oximeters. The heart lung transplant, the first heart lung transplant, the people involved. We spoke to, unfortunately, of the about approximately 200 people who were involved in the Larson years. Quite a few have passed away. And so of the 200, we try to contact the 160 or so people that were still with us, and we're successful in contacting over 100. And those people sent in, as you mentioned, their anecdotes, their memories, often their photographs. And it was just, to me, as I said, the big reward was hearing from all these people and recontacting them and learning about their success.
What did you find the easiest part of the book? Or was any of it easy?
It is. It's a real.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure any was easy.
I don't know. For me, it was quite a lot of work. Nothing like Jay. Jay has been the kingpin here. He collated it all and got it all together. And if it hadn't been for Jay, this had never been happened. So, but I thought it was quite taxing at times to try and get everybody to support or to write. And there were people who live close by who just didn't, who we know, but maybe they decided they didn't want anything to do with it. But that's a pity.
Yeah. No, it was not easy. First of all, there's so many people involved, and many of them have had internet web information, but quite a few didn't. And we went through lots and lots of efforts to contact people. One of the strategies was going to the California medical licensing and see who held medical licenses in California, because that lists the last known address. And so even if we couldn't find them on the internet or had no contact information from the department, we sent them physical mail just to try to reach them. And we were successful in reaching the vast majority of people.
I was going to say, I agree. I think I just wanted to say that, getting back to the amount of what all these people have done is absolutely remarkable. And Bill News, of course, is stand out. And we actually put him up for him and the Japanese gentleman who invented the oximeter, but unfortunately didn't really know what to do with it. you put them up for the Nobel Prize, actually, because if you think about it, every bloody day, oximeters are put on patients in ICU, emergency room, everywhere. I mean, that oximeter is just been an absolute godsend. And must have saved, if one was able to do a prospective study, it would have saved thousands upon thousands of people. So It was an amazing thing. Sorry.
No, I was going to say anecdotally, since I was there at the time, Minolta produced the prototype pulse oximeter because it was invented in Japan, and they sent Stanford this prototype to test, to evaluate. And we thought it was wonderful, non-invasive means of following oxygenation. Well, anyway, sent the prototype back to Minolta, and they basically said that there was no clinical application for pulse oximetry, and they dropped it. And so, so Bill New and Mark Yelderman, who both had engineering backgrounds, actually resigned from Stanford and formed Nelcor. And the rest is history.
Right.
But they said no clinical application. They couldn't see any.
That's just mind-boggling. I mean, that's truly mind-boggling and really interesting. When you wrote this book, did you have a particular audience in mind? Like, who did you think was going to read this book? Or did you mostly just do it as a labor of love for yourselves? Does that make sense? I'm sorry if that question is leading, but I'm just curious who you thought, might read this.
Well, first of all, I think John and I did it, first of all, as a tribute to Phil Larson. Phil was the chairman who hired us both and had confidence. And so, second of all, I don't want to sound too maudlin, but I think the Stanford Anesthesia Department, I devoted my entire career there, and I thought it would be a good tribute to the department to educate the people about who came before them, because the department now is so large that the vast majority of people who are currently faculty and residents have no idea of what was accomplished in this department. And so, although I realized that the potential audience was relatively small, as you said, it was more of a labor of, I'm not sure love is the right word, but a labor of devotion to the department.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it was a very, very exciting period in anesthesia, I thought. With everything that's going on, all the things that were invented, and the whole thing at that time with monitoring coming on stream. The thing is that with the increased monitors that anesthesia have now, the malpractice insurance premiums for anesthesiologists have fallen. And that's the only specialty, as far as I know, that has actually malpractice the fees have fallen as compared to everybody else who's gone up. And this, I think, is due to the fact that in those years, there was this tremendous effort by an awful lot of people to try and make things safer.
It's more than just the monitoring. It's everything. The new drugs, the progress. I have a little piece there where I'm looking back on my residency almost 50 years ago, and anesthesiology was quite simple in those days. It wasn't a popular specialty because we had, one inhalation drug that was used, halothane. We had fentanyl and morphine, and maybe Demerol, nitrous oxide. But monitoring was with a stethoscope, precordial stethoscope, or an esophageal stethoscope. And blood pressure by hand, we had this was the period where all that changed as far as new drugs being introduced and techniques, monitoring techniques, as you mentioned, critical care I mean, a large part of this book is devoted to Mike Rosenthal and the establishment of the ICU at Stanford didn't exist before this period. Cardiac group, its development, Kent Gorman organizing cardiac anesthesia and making it a subspecialty in anesthesiology. The pediatric anesthesiologists who really created the subspecialty of pediatric anesthesia, and it goes on, and all this occurred during that 10-year period, basically.
I was also struck by the number of books that were published and the number of people who went on to be, if not chairs, at least, very influential in anesthesiology. And I don't know, because I've never read a book like this, if any other department, I assume that there are other departments that could really boast the amount of influence. I mean, I look at the names, Mervyn Mays, Stansky, Bob Sladen.
It goes on and on. Paul White.
It goes on and on and on. Well, all the Paul White, all the patents that came out of this department, either people who were residents here or people who were faculty here. It must have been amazing. Patricia Kapoor, who went on to be chair at UCLA. I mean, just so many people that are so well known and have had a real impact on the field of anesthesia and on the various subspecialties, as you mentioned, critical care. I found that part of it really fascinating. I don't do critical care, as you know. I do peds anesthesia, but I just found that so fascinating. The story of how even critical care units developed, and then the people and the training and all of that kind of stuff. I'd be curious what it was like working with all of those amazing people at that time. Did you know they were all destined for greatness when you were working with them?
Had no idea that so many would accomplish so much. Obviously, some people were shown as stars, while others didn't. But, we all worked together. It was a relatively small department, certainly by today's standards. And we all worked together closely. It was a lot of camaraderie. If you see from the residents' comments, they all mention how Phil Larson would have them over his house and have department barbecues and whatever. It was a much... Everybody knew each other and enjoyed each other's company, and it was just fun working with friends.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was only there from 77 to 78, but I do remember many of the residents of that time. I mean, Patricia Kapoor, of course. I remember, of course, Al Hackle, he's pediatric. He was terrific, and it was... the names keep coming to me, and it was a very happy time. I felt it was a really very happy department, very conducive. Everybody supported each other. It was terrific.
Yeah, I see David Gaba was a resident at that time. I mean, think about his contributions. He and the crisis management and anesthesiology stuff. In fact, our grand rounds this morning was related to that on the emergency manuals. I mean, all of their contributions. It must have been really inspiring to be there then. That's what I would think. I don't know if it was or not.
Well, as you said, I'm sure other departments have similar people who contributed. But I think what makes this book unique is that we're getting the first-person experiences and memories of the individuals who made it happen while we still can. The problem with my first book is there were only literally three people still alive in the 1909 to 1972 group that I could interview. And so everything was based on what we could find on the internet. For this group, we were able to interview or at least get written questionnaires back from the vast majority of the people involved. And so this is unique in that it's first person experiences.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about in terms of either the characters at the time, or the process of writing the book, or the process for anybody who wants to write a book? Advice that you have, anything that you think we should talk about?
Well, my biggest concern is the lack of contact information. All these former residents were happy to hear from us at Stanford, and as I said, most had very, very fond memories. The problem is that we don't have contact information for a large number of these residents and for the residents that followed. And my hope with this would stimulate more interest in reorganizing an alumni association to allow this continued contact with our former faculty and residents.
Yeah, and you were saying that you would hope. Is that still the case? Is there still no alumni association or anesthesia alumni association that tracks, in particular, the residents that trained here, or has that changed?
No, it's changed. That we had one originally. Aubrey Mays, I believe, was he the first president, John? But Aubrey Mays was,
I think he was.
Yeah, Bill New was a president, Ken Gorman, and then Eltherington, Lon Eltherington.
Not Eltherington, Allring.
John Allring. But yes, I don't believe it's active at all. We had no lists. The list that the department gave us was, the vast majority of the emails were no longer in service.
Wow. Well, I do hope that changes. I also, as I was reading through this, I will say that it made me really wonder about my classmates when I was a resident, and what happened to them, what they're doing, and would they, there's some with whom I've kept in touch, but others with whom I've not. And it was fascinating thinking about, I would love for someone at some point to do something similar. It feels like it should be something that all institutions should have to some degree. But it sounds like it was an awful lot of work to get there.
Well, John, you should comment, because prior to this book, John actually did a very similar book with the graduates of his medical school class in Dublin. John?
Yeah. So it started a long time ago. I don't know if I bore you, but I'm going to try and make it short. So we were 50 characters that qualified in Trinity College in Dublin in Ireland. And when we started, I started sort of collecting, we had a meeting. We got together and I said to them all, well, everybody must bring a story about their experiences and time when they were in Dublin. And so from these stories, which were going back to 2010, we built on it. And we managed there were 9 people who had passed on, so that makes it 41. We were in contact with 34 when the book came out, and 29 people contributed. Not everybody did. But it's a reflection of, they talk about their time in Dublin, they talk about their life afterwards, etc. And the people have actually they have worked in over 25 countries. They have worked on every conceivable continent, and they live on every conceivable continent at the moment. So, but actually fascinating. And the interesting thing was that when I gave the book to, and all the photographs to the Trinity College Library, which is one of the biggest libraries in the United Kingdom, and that part of the world. And she said, this is amazing, she said, because nobody ever writes about their undergraduate experiences. Everybody talks about their postgraduate experiences. So I was quite shocked about that. Anyway, again, it was a labor of love, I think, more than anything else. It was some great stories.
So I would encourage people who have the time to do it, because, as I said, it's very interesting following up on people you work with and knew. The problem, we've been asked if we're going to continue on, And the answer is probably not. In looking at the next 10 years, which included Barry Fraley's tenure as chair, I counted over 200 residents alone that were recruited during that period. And the work is overwhelming to go through trying to find them and contact them. So I would.
Yeah, and now the department is over 200 people, a year. It's
Yes,
it's going to be
yes,
very overwhelming.
yes. The department is hosting an event in 2 weeks, actually. John and I we reorganized or started an Emeriti group, and we had the first annual meeting last year of the Living Emeriti. And in 2 weeks, we can combine that with the residents who contributed to the book. Were invited to an event, and that may be the start of some organization into an alumni association or society. So this book, one of its successes may be in that it reinstitutes an alumni organization for the Stanford Department of Anesthesiology. Many other major academic centers have alumni associations. I still get invited to the Beth Israel dinner at the ASA every year, and I graduated 48 years ago. So they obviously keep a very active, up-to-date alumni list.
There were a couple of other things that I was really impressed about when I was reading this book, and that was one is how it seems like from very early on, international trips and mission trips were very much a part of the DNA of this department with Interplast, and I assume other organizations as well. And two was how very international the group was from from the very beginning, including, of course, Dr. Utne. But do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, first of all, anesthesia, 50 years ago, again, was not that popular. When I trained in Beth Israel, all my faculty were foreign graduates. So it's not unusual in this period, 72 to 82, to have a number of people, many who started out as adjunct faculty coming temporarily, like Sheila Cohn and Stanley Samuels and John eventually, all returned and spent the remainder of their career here. So it was a great opportunity from people to come and work for a year or two to get I think they call it the American experience, and then go back to their own institutions. As far as the travel, the plastic surgeons organized this group called Interplast. It's called Resurge now. But Interplast would send medical teams to developing countries to do surgery on cleft lips and palates and burns, basically. And every resident during these years would elect to go on at least one trip during their residency. And to this day, for me, it was perhaps the most rewarding experience as a physician, as an anesthesiologist, to be able to go on these trips and to be able to see what could be accomplished for these people, these children who had no other resource. So yes, and if you look at the resident memories there, almost many of them, say the Interplast trip was one of the highlights of their residency.
I think that's very true, and I know. I mean, you Jay, and Stanley Samuels, they published their experiences in German, for God's sake, and it was terrific. But what I felt was very sad when in the 90s, corporation got involved with it, and suddenly these corporations wouldn't allow residents to come along because it was a so-called lower standard, and it became. I was furious about it. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we have the same situation in Stanford. we have residents. No, that wasn't good enough. It had to be a board-certified anesthesiologist working by himself, and they took away the whole lot of fun of it. And it was a time when I was the resident director.
Yeah, well, John, you're talking about only the interclass group becoming research. I'm sure there are other medical missions out there. The hypocrisy of all that is that they allowed surgical residents to go, but not anesthesia residents. So
that's correct. That's absolutely true.
So we became dissatisfied with that particular group. When John says corporation, it means that a different group of non-physicians took control of the organization.
I see.
That's correct.
But it was fantastic experience. I went on quite a few trips, and each one of them was just a wonderful experience.
What would your advice be to anybody who was going to try and sit down and do something similar for either their residency or their anesthesia department or their anesthesia group? Do you have words of wisdom to share with future authors for a similar project?
Just set aside a lot of time. I mean, the reason we're able to accomplish this is both John is still active, but not clinically, but I was fully retired. I don't believe something of this magnitude to be accomplished unless somebody has the time to do it. On the other hand, I would people who have an interest in writing and history can take on a challenge, a lesser challenge, like contacting the 10 or 15 former residents in your own class and writing it, or as John did, the 50 or so people who he had emails for, but to try to track down hundreds of people is a challenge that requires a lot of time and a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think I agree with Jay. I think that to start to think like this is, okay, you have to identify the period you want to study, and then to see, okay, then you must have information about who was there and from what period were they there. And it takes a lot of work. And if you haven't got that information, it becomes really difficult. And that's why I think if this department would reactivate an alumni association, then I think it will be doable, because we may not have the information or the contact information for Dr. X, but Y may have it. And we found that as we went along, we had one person who knew 3 or 4 of them. So that was great. So it's hard work. And I totally agree with Jay that you've got to be committed to this, because sometimes I thought, jeepers, wow. And of course, somebody would always be somebody who sends information, a lot of information, very, very often, and others not so often. So I don't know. Sorry.
Was there any part of it that was really fun, that was really like, wow, this is great, this is really fun?
Well, for me, is not only the contacting people, but actually speaking to people. Didn't realize how many people I really hadn't spoken to in many, many years, and for me, as I said, that was the best part, just to recontact and reconnect.
I agree.
Yeah, and there are some anecdotes that we found funny, but couldn't place in the book. There are several serious things, like people losing their licenses. We had a number of people who lost their medical license for one reason or another. The only one of those I put in there was one of our former residents who murdered his wife in Idaho. I think the statute of limitations is now like 45 years. So I included that. But there was some negative things also that came out, but they're not included in the book.
Yeah, I noticed there wasn't very much gossip or, things of a personal nature. So, which I think is probably appropriate.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. We try to keep the personal things, mostly the bad ones, out of the book. Yeah, it's about the people who were there, but we chose. If somebody felt it was important to talk about their wife, for instance, we included that. But it's mostly about the men and women who were physically part of the faculty and residency.
Yep.
Well, as we finish up, is there anything else that either of you would like to share about writing the book, writing any future books you might be wanting to write? You've both already said you're not going to do the next volume because it seems like at this point it would be untenable. But is there anything else you'd like to share about the book, the process, the people, anything at all that you think the CSA audience or the podcast audience might enjoy hearing about?
Yeah, I wouldn't totally say wouldn't do it if there were some form of support, secretarial help or whatever. It might be doable. It's just the scut work of trying to contact people and whatever is the real challenge. The writing is not so much a challenge. The publishing is easy. It's self-published on Amazon, and for anyone thinking of writing a book, the process is seamless and easy. And you can publish a book with an intended audience of 10 or 10,000 on Amazon. It's all free, and so
Wow.
I would think that would be a motivation for somebody who does have something they want to publish. It's fun. I've always enjoyed writing, expressing myself in one form or another. So this is the 10th book that I have authored or co-authored on Amazon. The others are, with the exception of the previous history book, the others are not are attempts at humor. And John has a couple of books, and he's currently doing a children's book, Christmas children's book. So it's the opportunity is there, and anybody with interest or talent in writing, I would encourage them to go ahead and publish it on Amazon.
I like to add on to say that I would love to do the up to the 90s. But we need to have some support. We need to find more. I agree with Jay. The Scott's work is to try and find these people. And you really would like to find them, to give them the opportunity. But the writing, if it hadn't been for Jay, this would never happen. He just loves to write, and he's bloody good at it. And so if it hadn't been for him, this would never have happened. So you've got to have somebody. So the message really is you've got to have somebody who loves to write. That really is. It's the secret.
And the plans are for John to write the Norwegian edition.
Yeah.
That's the latest. Yeah.
Wait, but John, I want to know about the children's book you're writing.
Yeah, well, this is a game I created one Christmas, and I had my eldest son running around Stanford campus with a bell, and all the kids were running around after, etc. And so I started thinking about maybe the night that Rudolph lost his bell, and so that's the story of the children finding the bell and helping saving Christmas. And so we helped. Jay's help. I just managed to publish it now, so it's on Amazon, and it's a bedtime storybook. Let me tell you that. Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to the both of you. I have personally, like I said, I really enjoyed reading the book, which I didn't think I would when I picked it up because, again, I didn't train here and I spent a lot of my career elsewhere. But as a current faculty and an anesthesiologist who knows many of the people in this book, either by reputation or personally, I found it delightful and very easy to read. I loved the pictures. I loved the history. I just want to say for anyone listening out there, I think this is not just a book for people who have a connection with Stanford. There's so much in this book about not just the history of anesthesia at Stanford, but the history of the development of anesthesia, both at Stanford, but in California, and indeed the practice of anesthesia throughout the world has been so influenced by many of the people that were here at this incredibly valuable time. Starting with, but not ending with, pulse oximetry, capnography, and all the work that Dr. White has done on medications, both the Dr. Mazes, Aubrey and Mervyn, so many other people, Dr. Rosenthal, I can't even, you can't really stop once you start naming names. So I am going to stop there because there's too many names to name. But this was truly a fun read. I hope that most CSA members, particularly anyone with an interest in history, pick up the book and read it. And anyone else who has just an interest in the history of anesthesia during the 70s and early 80s decides to take a gander at the book. So thank you again, both of you. In conclusion, this is Rita Agarwal, the host for CSA Vital Times, the podcast, and I hope you join us for our next episode.